I think, Monica, uh, we'd like to, I think, share with our readers and followers what is it that you do with Andy here. Not with Andy, with Nick. He's here.
Well, I've just met Andy.
Well,
So-
we apparently do panels together. That's our thing.
But my name is Monica, and I work with Nick at the County of Santa Clara, and we are based out of the County Executive's Office, specifically in the Division of Equity and Social Justice, working on the census project. So that's the lens that we are looking at this project for, because this is really a community effort and something that can impact our equity over the next 10 years. So my role is really a lot of the day-to-day functions. I am doing a lot of the internal county effort. So we do have 22,000 employees with the County of Santa Clara, and we want to make sure that all of them and their households get counted in 2020, but also to have those conversations with the thousands of people that county employees interact with on a daily basis. So if the county interacts with folks, part of the interaction will include census for the next couple of months to make sure that we are asking them, do you know about census? Hey, have you heard about census? Because unfortunately, the reality that we're seeing in the community is that we have people who don't know about census more than we do. So we know that we have to go on a large education campaign and make this more of a normalized behavior. Because if they don't know what it is, or if they're concerned about what it's used for, then that's really what we, as trusted messengers with the community, need to dispel and make sure that folks know what this means and how this impacts them. So that's really my role. And a lot of other things like social media and stuff, but yeah.
And Andy, you and I were speaking earlier, and you mentioned that education about the census is something that actually happens at the schools already. Is there an effort to focus on this particular year in some other capacity so that students are aware that this is a monumental, because this is the year that they get counted? So what are the efforts that are done in the schools?
Well, I'm going to probably answer this question a little indirectly. As an elected official, one of the things you do is you try to look out for the community as a whole. You take a global viewpoint, not just your area of focus. Certainly, education is my area of focus, and I'm very committed to that. But you also look at how things affect your community, and you become an advocate for those. So the census controls $675 billion worth of federal funding. And those funds find their way into almost all facets of our community, including education to a large extent. Federal funding we receive, it's not just Title I, although that is probably the largest program. There's Title I, Title II, Title III, IDEA, Part B. So there's a lot of things that get us, that we bring our tax money back to us to help support our community. As far as what we're doing specifically with the schools, we've just recently passed a resolution of support. Our administration is looking for opportunities of how we can impact this in a positive way. And I don't have specific answers for you on that. We do have civics classes, of course, and certainly the first article of the Constitution is what created the census, the requirement for it. I think somebody said it's a 7th line or 6th line or something like that. So we are getting basic education, but I do believe that the answer to how to reach the hard-to-reach people is education. And I also do believe that, as Nick said, it has to be targeted to specific groups, where you consider what their concerns are, what their fears are, what their opportunities are, what would make them excited and motivated to do this, and it's going to be different. So it's not going to be a broad brush approach. It's going to have to take an education effort. We the schools certainly can do their part, but this is a community-wide thing that we need to focus on.
So Monica, when I spoke with you, you mentioned one of the hardest people to count are actually children. So tell us a little bit, what makes this hard and what are the efforts that one can do to address that?
Thank you for the question. Yes, one of the highest undercounted populations in 2010 were youth, specifically children ages 0 to 5. We actually don't know why that is. There's no real reason that has been shared with everyone for why that happened, but we know it happened. It might be because people didn't realize that their children should count, or they should put their children on their form, on a government form. So there might be a plethora of reasons for it, but what we're really trying to do is spread that awareness and make sure that everyone knows that every person counts. Because of all of the things that the positive resources and political representation that it brings to our community for 10 years. And some of the things that we're working on in partnership with a lot of the school districts, especially through the County Office of Education, as well as First Five, to make sure that all families and all parents know that their kids matter and that their kids count. So there are strategies around how we can reach those folks, mostly a lot of materials in language and making sure that they know that their participation will bring resources for their families back to this area. And Nick touched on this a little bit earlier, but we pay taxes every year, but we really only get one chance every 10 years to say that we deserve those resources back here. So whether that be for schools, for special education, for roads, for healthcare, all of those things are things that everyone uses. So we want to make sure that we get our fair share.
Just this last week, I published a story on our magazine where we spoke with a woman who is a domestic worker she speaks Punjabi, and with an Uber driver, both of whom are Indians. And so asking them, did they know about the census? They said no. And I said, well, would you participate if it came? They said, we are very busy working maybe 3 jobs. If something comes in the mail, they will try to address it. But I found out an interesting thing, which the woman said that the government already knows about us when we are born, when we enter the country, when, there are 1,000 ways where our information is already with the government. So what's important about filling this out? How do we address that? How do we address that particular concern where people say there's no need, the government already knows we're here?
Would you like me to answer that?
Sure. I can just tell you one of the things that happens. A lot of times people think they have birth records, they have immigration records, this type of thing. But what's critically important about the census is not just how many people are here, but where they're located. So during the year, during their time in the U.S., if they're new or if they're naturally born here, they move all around the place. And that determines how many, for instance, the state of California right now has been losing population. And the population determines how many congressmen we have in the House of Representatives. Currently, they're looking at the possibility of having us lose one of our congressmen, going from 53 congressmen to 52. So knowing where they're at is really important so that we can help establish that we still have that representation. Also, the representation in our state government also is driven by census. And so what your local representation at the state level is, as well as half a dozen other things, I think Monica probably could do a better job of explaining that to me. But that's one counter to that argument. Why do they need to know? Well, we need to know not only that, but what's changed, where you are now, this type of thing, so that we can make sure you get the best set of benefits at being a citizen of or even non-citizen of the U.S. Because it doesn't matter whether you're a citizen or non-citizen.
Yeah, I get that question quite often, actually. People say, why can't you use credit card records? Not everyone has a credit card. At the end of the day, the census is a point-in-time count. So that's where you're living on April 1. So, for example, if you're going to college, which is why Nick talked about Stanford and how difficult it is to count there. If you're going to college, your permanent residence and all of the government records that you're talking about could be in San Jose. But if you're going to UCLA, you're meant to be counted where you are on April 1, 2020. And that's going to be in LA. So yes, there are places that people know where you are, maybe, but they don't know specifically where people are on April 1, 2020. And that really matters for all of the things that we just talked about and making sure that the resources come to that community where they are living.
I think there's another answer to that too, and it's something Nick said, and that is that the information that you're requiring for the census is completely isolated from all other information. Not only is it not shared, but it's not dragging information from other sources except from the horse's mouth, so to speak, from the actual person. So the answer to the people you're talking about is really the census has to do its own count. It doesn't rely on any other data.
So, at an
Well,
academic
and
level,
it
I
is-
actually do understand that.
Well, it's also a legal requirement. I
Yeah.
mean, it is part of our Constitution.
Yeah.
It's one of the first things in it. So, you know, even if you could acquire the data elsewhere, that's not what our law says.
Yeah. So I learned another interesting thing about how people look at information. So this is the other thing that this woman said. She said that, oh, when I drive on the highway, you have these signs that say San Jose population X, San Jose, Santa Clara population such and such. She says, well, they already know, see, because that number keeps changing in that. So I didn't really have a counter to that. But I think
We're just going to have to modify those signs to say guesstimate.
But I think I really do appreciate the effort that the U.S. Census is doing, because I've heard from so many different agencies that have reached out, even to organizations like ours and Diana's, to make sure that we reach out to these various demographics. And we live in a really very interesting part of the country where we have immigrants from all over the world, all come with their own baggage. And to understand, it's like there is inherent distrust in sharing data about themselves. And of course, there's a lot of fear right now, so I can totally understand the concern that the Census Bureau recognizes that there will be an undercount. And so, efforts like this, where we have a conversation with someone from the census and someone from community leaders from various parts between now and June, Diana and I will be meeting with several people. We collect information. We share this in ways that become accessible for the average person to understand, and participate. That's our goal. And I think we all do our do our parts in it. And Andy, it's an opportunity really for us to learn. You said you've been with the school district for 16 years?
Yeah, close to that. 15 for sure.
15.
15 and a half. I don't know how you count.
But, we want to find more ways, because this issue that Monica mentioned, I think is really important. It's critical because we know that there is an undercount, and we want to find ways. Suggest ideas. We'll take it to our communities, the people that we know. We have some other ideas that we are considering, running an essay competition, for example, around why I count. We are willing to fund schools to run these competitions, give prizes to them. How is the way that one can actually take part? Who do we approach to do that?
Well, I think what you'd do is you'd approach the superintendent of the schools as well as the school board. But I would start with the superintendent. And the idea that you just came up with, why my vote counts, why I count, I think it's an excellent one. It's particularly would be good for the grade school, but it would work in secondary as well. And like I said, we are actually working on trying to come up with some ideas, but I don't know for sure what we've done. The other challenge you should probably consider is working with the County Board of Education. So the County Board of Education will be able to interface with all of the school districts in the county, which is something that you're going to want to make sure you do. And if there's a program rolled out by the county, I think you'll be able to get more consistency and greater participation than having to work with, I think there's like 50 or so school districts in the county of Santa Clara. And so to individually reach out to each one of those would be a Herculean task. Now, you're going to reach out to every citizen and get them to say, that they're here. So it's a pretty big task to start with. But I think that it would be easier to go through like the county, get a coordinated effort, be able to focus some of the money that way through it. But it's just, and we may come up with a great idea, and if we do, then what we would love to do is share that. We'll probably share it with the county. We'll share it with both the county that does the census, as well as the county that does County Board of Education.
So has your organization actually been in touch with the County Board of Education? Are there specific programs in place to address this particular issue about the children?
Sure, yes. The Santa Clara County Office of Education is involved in census. They passed a similar resolution in support of census participation. They actually have a civic engagement wing of the office, and they are working on census as well as voter engagement, but a lot of census work. So one of the events that they have planned is actually on February 15th. It's a Saturday at Mexican Heritage Plaza to invite families to learn about census in a more, not in a classroom setting, but talk about how it could impact their families, or they have an idea about doing a passport where you get stamped at each location and you can have a raffle prize. So they're trying to be creative around how to engage families. And some of the other things that have been tossed around for schools in particular is because we know that there's only so many sources of trusted information in our community now, and they really come down to those where your chosen place of worship is, where you receive your services, whether that be healthcare, etc., where you go for library services, and in schools. So those are really the trusted places of information for people, and that's why the County Office of Education is really involved, and they'll be rolling out a lot of programs. But I do also want to mention a program that Asian Americans for Community Involvement in partnership with NBC Bay Area is running, called Growing Up Asian America. Yes, so they are doing that, and it is a video, art, and essay contest for K through 12. And there are 25 cash prizes in honor of the 25th anniversary of Growing Up Asian in America, encouraging students to talk about why they matter, and also with the lens of why it's important to get Asian Americans counted.
And I was going to say, some of our best ambassadors are our students themselves. So particularly in the secondary, for instance, our comprehensive high schools, I know I just asked one of the assistant principals there, we have over 50 student clubs that take different roles and participate. And so working through, and I guess that would be best if it was coordinated through the county, but something that could do that, where we engage the students, and the students go out to become the ambassadors. In many cases, particularly newly immigrated families, the student is the only person who has good, comfortable language skills, and they can go back and talk to mom and dad or uncle and whatever, and help with that communication process, and they will be trusted, they'll be listened to. We did a project a while back where we were reaching out under the DACA when it was coming out, and an education program. And we found initially it was very, very hard because people were afraid to come and talk to us. And so the students turned out to be the vehicle that got the communication successfully out.
Yeah, and Monica, you mentioned an interesting place that places of worship. In our very informal survey that we had done, that's one of the things that we found out. Places of worship and ethnic media, because they're still sources that are considered trusted messengers. And that's why I think having Ding Ding TV or having India Currents get the word out is very valuable. And I don't have any other questions for you, but perhaps closing remarks from, is there anything that, messages that you want us to leave with? Like, what are the things?
Sure. I think that one of our biggest messages, and we talk about census all day, every day. That's Nick and my complete job. But one thing that really resonates with people is what he talked about and what he mentioned, 10 minutes for 10 years of impact in your community. If no one remembers anything that we ever say, hopefully they'll remember census, 10 minutes for 10 years of impact. And this is a community effort. It is not something that we can do as individuals or as a team of 3. This is a community effort because we want to make sure that every person knows that they matter and that they should not be silenced in our community. So however that happens, we are all working towards the same goal. So we want to make sure that each person is reached in however they feel most comfortable. So we appreciate everyone's assistance with making sure that we get a complete count here in Santa Clara County, because it is going to be a team effort, and that's how we're going to get there.
Well, I'm actually very impressed with the presentation today. The work that Nick and Monica are doing, I think it's great. I think you're engaging. It's extremely important to our community. It's important to our schools. I think you're going to find that almost all of your elected representatives and the schools in particular are going to be very, very supportive of what we can do to make sure that the census is well done, is effective, that we have the outreach that we need. Because we all have a common interest here. So anyway, I'm just was honored that you wanted to hear what I had to say. So with that, I think I'll be smart and shut my mouth.